I may be coming to you with the best news you'll hear all day. That $10,000 EIDL stimulus payment from the SBA that we all heard about weeks and weeks ago, that later turned into a pipe dream, and $1,000 per employee, could potentially become reality again. And I'll get into exactly why. So as we all know, just to cover our bases here, every small business, every self-employed individual, even anyone with a side hustle could potentially apply for the EIDL grant, a $10,000 grant that basically stipulated that everyone would receive this grant whether they were accepted for a loan or not, and they would receive funds in their bank account within 3 days. It seemed like a dream come true in a horrible economy for basically every small business owner. It was a lifeline. It would ensure survival. It seemed so open. It just seemed like amazing. And then millions and millions and millions of people applied, and we were left with them rationing the system down to just $1,000 per employee per business, effectively creating this into a program really not worth much. Because if you have more than 10 employees, $10,000 really doesn't do a whole lot. If you have less than 10 employees, like you have one employee, $1,000 basically does nothing to save your business. So it turned into this, from this wonderful beacon into, I'll take it if I get it. But that dream may still be alive. A few members of Congress just sent a letter to the Treasury and the SBA outlining how this program should have been done, what they need to do with future funds, and basically their expectations. And I have the letter here, and I'm going to go over the highlights so you guys can completely understand their demands and understand that we might potentially still be getting this $10,000 per business grant, even for people who have already applied and received less. So they start out by saying, we write regarding implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act that was signed into law yesterday. This act replenishes key funding for SBA COVID-19 response programs, including $310 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program and $50 billion to leverage more than $350 billion for the SBA's EIDL loan program and $10 billion for the SBA's emergency EIDL grant advance program. The act also includes important information on getting funding to underserved people. So they're just laying it out exactly what this funding is for first. And then they expand on this. We must ensure that federal recovery funding reaches businesses that have been underserved by mainstream lending institutions in the past. So they point out that in the first round of funding, a major issue was all these huge businesses that were able to apply and receive money, and all these underserved smaller businesses and minority type businesses, or maybe rural markets, that either loan amounts were small, they didn't have banking relationships, you name it, whatever the issue was, they weren't able to receive funding and are left just like with nothing. And now this additional funding is here, and they're trying to make sure that these people and these smaller lending institutions actually receive some funding. And they're just trying to make the game a little bit more fair here. So they go on to say, Congress set aside $60 billion in paycheck protection lending, including $30 billion for small banks and credit unions, with fewer than $10 billion in assets. For community-based lenders that include minority depository institutions, MDIs, community development financial institutions, CDFIs, as well as SBA microlenders and certified development companies, CDCs. To ensure that these lenders and businesses are able to access this set-aside money, the SBA and Treasury should use their administrative authority to create a special set-aside of at least $10 billion in paycheck protection funds solely dedicated to these institutions. Which only makes sense. I mean, it's not written in law, but it makes sense. Hey, set aside a portion of money for these smaller lenders and these minority groups and these rural groups to ensure that they'll actually receive some money. Otherwise, everyone else who has banking relationships or easier access to capital is going to take it up right away because this funding is not going to last. It only makes sense to set aside some money. It's not in law, so that's why we have this letter telling them, hey, this is what you need to do, guys. So they go on to say, they make a bunch of requests. They say, please make the following actions within 48 hours. And they're requesting the SBA and the Treasury to set aside at least $10 billion for MDIs and CDFIs to make paycheck protection loans to those groups that are in need and that were underserved in the first round. They ask to eliminate the lender eligibility requirement for non-depository CDFIs, to have the requirement being to have originated, maintained, and serviced more than $50 million in business loans. So there was some kind of stipulation that only allowed lenders who had facilitated more than $50 million in loans to do these paycheck protection loans. So they're asking to do away with that criteria. That way, these smaller institutions are more able to serve the people in need. They also ask to ensure that non-depository CDFIs do not have to re-verify information of existing customers. Now, this is important because the CDFIs are more likely to help out those businesses and people in need, the underserved people. And if they have to re-verify information for existing customers, that means that the process is going to take longer. That's even more likely that someone else receives those funds instead of these people. They also ask to ensure the swift and smooth integration of CDFIs, MDIs, and other small non-bank lenders into the SBA's E-Tran system. A major issue with all these loan programs has been this E-Tran system that is even difficult to navigate for the large lending institutions. And we're seeing all sorts of issues with this as well, with delays and timing of the system. And what I actually read earlier today is that people are suspecting that the system is not working properly, and the SBA is saying, hey, this is how the system's supposed to work. It's supposed to take this long. That's just hearsay. There's no necessary proof there. They're also asking, create in coordination with the CDFI Fund and the Treasury Office of Minority and Women Inclusion webinars tailored for these small lenders wishing to become paycheck protection lenders to make it easier for those groups to serve the underserved communities. And also to collaborate with other minority lenders on the exact same thing, to ensure that everyone has equal access to the Paycheck Protection Program and funding. This only makes sense. I mean, this is a major issue with the first round. This is why the large businesses received funding and many small businesses didn't. They also ask to remove barriers for the paycheck protection loan applications who are ex-offenders, including those who are charged but never convicted. Moving on to the part that we all want to hear about, the $10,000 grant amount. Now, this is going to be a bit of reading, so bear with me. Under the CARES Act, emergency EIDL grants were to be made in the amounts of up to $10,000 within 3 days of receiving an application. However, the SBA has taken much longer to disperse funds to businesses. Furthermore, the Trump administration used its discretionary authority to severely limit these awards, permitting businesses to claim just $1,000 per employee. That means that currently a sole proprietor or small family-run business with only 2 or 3 employees cannot receive the full $10,000 allowable under the statute. When SBA chose to place arbitrary limitations on award amounts and ration available funding rather than request a new appropriation, as it was willing to do for the Paycheck Protection Program, it failed small businesses and small private nonprofits that counted on these funds. They go on to say, with the new $10 billion in funding for the emergency EIDL grants, the administration should remove the limitations it opposed that prevents businesses from receiving the full $10,000 grant. So they're citing the original CARES Act and saying, hey, guys, it's supposed to be $10,000. Fund the $10,000. If you need more money, request it before you run out. Just do what you're supposed to do, is basically what they're saying. They say businesses that have previously received reduced grants because they have fewer than 10 employees should receive the full amount, which means if this is enforced and you only received $1,000 because you have 1 employee, you may be entitled to receive that additional $9,000. They go on to say, going forward, new recipients should receive full awards as well, regardless of their size. Meaning, even if you're a sole proprietor or even if you drive for Uber, potentially you should receive that $10,000 is what they're saying. Furthermore, to prevent the administration from once again refusing to request additional appropriations when the program is fully subscribed, SBA should notify Congress as soon as funds begin to run low rather than cut the amount small businesses receive. So they're just saying again, hey, just ask for more funds. And then the last thing they say is it should dedicate the resources it has received for administrative expenses in order to get the funds out within the 3-day time frame. Now that is the one issue that I think simply is not doable. I don't think it's possible for them to send out all those funds within 3 days. Anyone who has ran even a semi-large organization can understand that just throwing money at a problem doesn't necessarily fix the problem. Just because they receive millions and millions and millions for administrative expenses and technology does not mean they can solve that problem within 3 days. I think, yes, they should rush, but I don't think it is possible to send it out in 3 days. I would like them to be able to, but I just simply don't think that's possible. They go on to say that the SBA has sent them reports every single week with loan amounts and loan sizes, and the first full report on paycheck protection data was on April 14th, almost a week after the SBA announced that the Paycheck Protection Program was running out of funds. So they're frustrated with the lack of reporting and the quality of reporting. And then they go on to say that Congress provided the SBA with $675 million in the CARES Act and $2.1 billion from that fund to hire additional staff and upgrade technology. However, like I said before, throwing money at a problem doesn't always solve the problem. So I don't think speed is necessarily going to be much better no matter how many more millions they throw at that problem. Then they go on to cite that the CARES Act explicitly includes incentives for lenders to make small dollar loans that benefit underserved borrowers and includes a sense of the Senate that Administrator Carranza should issue guidance to lenders on prioritizing, processing, and the disbursement of paycheck protection loans to underserved borrowers. I guess it explicitly says that in the CARES Act. So with this letter, I think it's quite promising. Again, I'll have it linked in the description if you want to take a closer look at it. There is a chance that small business owners and sole proprietors and independent contractors may still receive that $10,000 EIDL grant. And I can only hope so. I think this is a step in the right direction. And if I hear anything more on this, I will keep you guys updated. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.